Game Breaker TV.
This is Ed Park, aka Taugrim, bringing you my first Gunslinger video for Star Wars: The Old Republic. Gunslinger is the advanced class for Smuggler that dual wields. It's a DPS build, and it is the mirror of the Imperial Agent Sniper. The core mechanic for Gunslinger is cover, and you can see that the cast time abilities Charge, Burst, and Aim Shot are not enabled without cover, so I go ahead and pop cover here, and those buttons are now enabled. While in cover, a Gunslinger has a buff called Unshakable, which prevents them from being interrupted, and is a great help for getting our cast time nukes off in PvP. You can tell when a player is Gunslinger or Sniper Spec because their cover will have these blinking lights here and that very visible shield, and you can place cover anywhere on the map you want. So for example, a typical opener against opponents, you put up your cover, go ahead and open up with Aim Shot, which has a 15-second cooldown. It's a long cast nuke, and then you can spam Charge Bolts. Now notice cover can also tell you where you can take cover on the terrain, so you see those little green Gumbys, and I go ahead and roll into cover and then open up on these NPCs. This class uses an energy bar, and energy regenerates at a non-linear rate, so you want to be careful about not letting it get too low, and if needed you can use a 2-minute cooldown in combat to instantly regenerate 50 energy. For the 3 talent trees, Sharpshooter is the cast time nuking spec. That's the tree I'm currently running in this video. There is a Saboteur tree which provides a lot of AoE damage and capabilities, and the Dirty Fighting tree provides heavy bleed over time damaging effects. The Void Star Warzone is a match in which both sides take turns being the attacker and defender. The goal as the attacker is to blast through a series of doors and rooms and progress further and faster than your opponents do in capping the end objective. So let's take a look at my 16 Gunslinger and a Pug Void Star. The first thing I do is I plant cover right next to a pillar, and you can see this position affords me a good field of fire so I can attack the enemies, but it also provides me with a good escape route. So it's really important to place cover in a good position to maximize your offensive and defensive capabilities. Right here, I notice a player who's on the door, so I come over and start hitting them with Hammer of Bolts. Now, I shouldn't have actually moved out of cover. I was probably within range, and it's important to stay in range so that you can use your Charge Burst. Like right there, I get a nice 2k crit with Charge Burst, and you'll see in a moment here that I get a crit for over 3k with Aim Shot. Aim Shot has crit for me as high as 3600. Now, this opponent is already going to blow up the door, so I go ahead and open up with an Aim Shot, and then hit them with a leg shot to hold them in place, and then fire as many charge bursts as I can before they're able to flee through the door. And the goal here is to bury this opponent in a heal deficit, so it makes it easy to finish them off, and that opponent either heals or takes a healing consumable. And I go ahead and move back into cover, but I am CC'd immediately. When you're crowd controlled, your cover breaks, so I come over here and I disable my opponent with a stun that's called Dirty Kick. You can hear it. It sounds like a groin shot with walnuts cracking. It's pretty nasty. And in this second room here, what you need to do is prevent the enemies from extending a bridge. And right here you can see Gumby's telling me to roll forward. Don't let Gumby dictate where you take cover. I take cover here because I don't want to get too close to them since I'm a range class, and if I'm standing right next to them, I'm going to make their job easier. So I burn down that player, and I'm taking some heavy focus fire, so I go ahead and as I'm strafing, use Hammer of Bolts to continue DPS on my opponents while looking for some help, and unfortunately I don't find any. I get stunned here and then run over by multiple Imperial players. Now they blast through the second set of doors pretty quickly, and we make our way to defend the third room. This room is really a place where a Gunslinger can shine, so I drop cover here, open up with Aim Shot, pop the buff Smuggler's Luck, which provides a guaranteed crit on the next charge burst, and you can see that I'm panning the camera while nuking to see what's going on around me. And I can do this as long as I have a target, have someone targeted. I can cast these abilities. I don't even have to look at them. I can just look at their health bar to see where they are in terms of being ready to drop. And then I notice an enemy player trying to ninja the door over on this side, so I go ahead and drop into cover and start nuking on him. So one thing to make sure of is you got to manage your energy pretty carefully, because if you just sit here and you spam Aim Shot and Charge Burst, you can see that my energy is starting to drop. So I go ahead and kite over a little bit, check the other door, make sure it looks okay, and then drop into cover here. And it's really important when defending these last doors to drop cover in a spot where you have a clear view of both doors, especially if you're in a pug like this and people really aren't paying attention. You'll see a few times that Imperial players get on the door and start planting the bomb, and they're nearby Republic players and they don't even notice. So I'm staying here between these two doors and trying to keep them off the doors as much as possible. So as I'm kiting, I'm just using Hammer of Bolts there. It's a mana free or energy free ability, and I get CC'd, so I go ahead, drop into cover here, and I try using the AoE knockback. It doesn't work, so I go ahead and I help burn down that player, and then I switch over to the other side. So you can see this spec is really, especially as a sharpshooter, it's a lot about cover management. You want to stay in cover as much as possible to be able to use your big cast time nukes, but you also need to move around enough to keep a good field of fire and make sure that you know what's going on in terms of the action. Now, we do have a number of really good crowd control abilities that we can use even if we're in cover, including the Dirty Kick ability, which, like I said, it sounds like the Nutcracker. It's a groin shot. And we also have a point-blank AoE, as well as a Flash Grenade, which is a AoE disable that's on a 90-second cooldown. The Flash Disable will break as soon as an opponent is hit, but it's really good for slowing opponents down. And right there you can see there are two Republic players, and they failed to notice that enemy assassin was capping on the door, and you totally don't want to get tunnel vision, because this match isn't really about damage. It's more about crowd control and keeping people off the door. So we know the last door is broken here. I'm staying here, and I go ahead and throw a Flash Grenade to slow them down, to CC some of them. And the goal for me here is just to slow them down as much as possible and delay their cap. So I go ahead and use the Dirty Kick right there to stun a player, and we drop them, and then Imperials manage to access the data core, and the round 1 ends. So as round 2 starts, we go ahead and push toward a door, and I usually will look to see which door seems to be more lightly defended. In this case, it's the west door, the left-hand door. I drop into cover, open up with Am Shot, and then start, and then I use Smuggler's Luck to provide the buff to make the next Charge Burst crit. And it's really important to burn down players as soon as possible to provide an opportunity to get on the door. So I'm helping to finish off this opponent who's pretty far away. And the neat thing about the Gunslinger is some of the abilities have a range out to 35 meters, which is longer than the 30 meters that most classes have. So I come up to this player, use Dirty Kick to stun him, drop into cover, and then resume nuking. And this may seem a little bit weird in some cases, but depending on whether or not your opponent has used their CCs, you can stand there and face tank them with cover up. Now in this case, I'm taking a significant amount of damage, and I get force left on there. So this player who's on me, I use Leg Shot, which is an instant cast root ability, and then kite over to break a line of sight and then get that healing consumable on the map. And then I drop into cover and just wait for him to come around, and he decides the better of it. Now I roll into cover to provide me with an open field of fire on that opponent. I don't stay in cover because at this point the door has been blasted and the fight is moving on. So I can DPS on the move, and as I drive by here, provide a drive-by blaster whip. It's a pistol whip, and it hits pretty hard. It can crit for as high as 1500, so when you're in melee range, you definitely want to use it. And then I go ahead and push up, roll into cover here. It's like a mini charge, and I'm nuking one target, and you can see a melee tries to get on me, so I use my point blank AoE to knock that melee opponent back while continuing to DPS on my target. We drop my target, I go ahead and use Dirty Kick to stun that player, and then we drop him. And then when I get on the computer over here to extend the bridge, it's important to note that I tuck in tight to the wall. If I'm standing off to the side like some of these other people are, they can get shot at by people who are around the pillar. Now, here's a really big mistake that our team makes. So I try to get on this door, and you'll see this a few times. I try to get on this door, and these other players come over and they try to get on the door too instead of trying to peel for me. So if someone's already planting a bomb, it's really important to use your crowd control abilities to shut down the enemies who are trying to come and interrupt them. You really only need one person on the door planting a bomb. I see this mistake made a lot in this match, and in my opinion, it's the reason why we lost. That, aside from the fact people were not really paying attention to doors, and I was having to cover 2 doors at that very last match to make sure that we weren't going to get ninja capped. So I obviously can't get on the door. There are too many defenders here. I drop into cover, and I'm going through the rotation of using my charge burst. I get CC'd here, and then as soon as I'm out of my CC, I go ahead and use Dirty Kick for the stun, Leg Shot, and then I strafe kite around the corner here to pick up the healing consumable. And I've got 2 enemy DPS on me, so I go ahead and drop into cover and burn down one while the other one is beating on me. Now keep in mind, in this particular case, I've already blown my AoE knockback. I also had my Flash Grenade on cooldown. And right there I used cover to close the distance and pick a good spot to turret from. Right here is perfect. I'm off to the side, and I can see the healing map consumable just off to my right. So if I'm in trouble, I can head over there, and I'm just looking at targets that are at low health and helping to finish them off. Now, when this player comes over to me, I go ahead and use that force kick, the dirty kick, the crotch shot, to go ahead and stun them in the nuts. It's a great way to defend yourself when an opponent closes the gap, and then you have the option of either continuing to DPS or CC them. So you can see we have people on the door, so I come over next to the enemy res point. I use flash grenade to disable 2 players, and it's all about just buying time for opponents, for our friendlies to plant the bomb. There are already enough people on the door trying to plant a bomb. I don't need to go do that, but I can delay the people who are dropping down, especially because when players first come out of the graveyard, they're not in combat yet, so they have their out of combat sprint run speed buff. So you can see the match there ends. We end up losing. I finish tops overall with damage at 190,000, 44 kills and 14 killing blows. Keep in mind, for most of this match I received little or no healing. I found that Gunslinger has great damage and crit mechanics. I was putting up over 200k damage by level 11 and 12, and the cover mechanic is very powerful in PvP when it's used properly along with our crowd control abilities. If you're looking for more information about SWTOR PvP, check out my class guides, and I'm also streaming live on twitch.tv/Taugrim live PvP footage with commentary, and I also interact with the chat room, so check me out there and let me know what you think of this video. Take care.
Game Breaker TV.